Well, think back to your childhood. Remember that magic 8-ball that was around about 20, 30 years ago? Maybe even 40 years now. Who knows? But we're going to have a little fun today. We're going to actually pull out the magic 8-ball in retirement planning with Lee Perkins, have him act as the 8-ball. We're going to ask him some key retirement questions and see what the 8-ball tells us.
Welcome to the My Retirement Clarity Podcast, where our goal is simple, to help you close the gap between what you know and what you implement. The team at J.L. Perkins Wealth Management does this by helping good people make great decisions so they can enjoy an amazing retirement. And now, here's your host and financial advisor, Lee Perkins.
Hello, welcome in. This is My Retirement Clarity. I am Ben George with Lee Perkins, owner and financial advisor at J.L. Perkins Wealth Management in Macon, Georgia. Lee, what's happening?
Not a whole lot, man. This should be a fun show. I've never thought of myself as being the kind of the 8-ball guide to retirement, but yeah, it'll be fun. Got some pretty cool questions we can kind of consider for this show.
I'm guessing your kids had an 8-ball around the house at some point, right?
You know, I don't remember if they did or not. I'm sure they probably have, but I didn't have one when I was growing up, but I had a couple of friends of mine, and they would bring them to school, and I always thought it was the coolest thing. But for some reason, I never had one, and I can't remember for sure if my kids had one. But I always kind of joked, "Hey, you." And I hope my wife is not listening. I'm like, Walker, you don't need an 8-ball. Just ask your mom because she knows everything. I'm kidding, Pam, if you're listening.
Well, you're going to play Pam's role today then, Lee, and I'm going to have you answer the questions for us and break it all down. If you have anything on your mind as we go through this, always encourage you to schedule a meeting by going to talkwithjlp.com. Easy way to get on Lee's calendar, talkwithjlp.com. All right, so I'm going to ask you the question, Lee. I want you to give me the 8-ball response to this. And I think there's something like 20 different replies within the 8-ball. I didn't think there was that many, but there are. So let's see if we get a positive, maybe a neutral, or a negative answer. So the first one, should I start saving for retirement now? What does 8-ball tell us?
The magic 8-ball answer is yes, definitely. And before I jump into here, I had no clue, Ben, that there were 20 answers here. Yeah. But they all kind of go into those three categories, sort of a positive, a neutral, and negative. It reminds me a lot of how politicians answer questions nowadays. As we record this, we're like, 7 days from the election. So once the show airs, that will have already happened. But I didn't know there were that many answers. But yes, the magic 8-ball answer here is definitely. And so no matter what your age is right now, start saving. I've used the example on the show before. The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The next best time is right now. And so I would say if I asked my clients, maybe I did sort of a poll and asked them what financial advice they would give to somebody, I'd say the very first thing is they would say to retire with very little debt. But the second one is to start saving as early as possible. And I think that's probably, it's not really a regret for everybody, but if somebody could go back and do something over, they would save sooner. Not necessarily more money, but they would save as soon as they can. Because at the end of the day, the more money you have going into retirement, the more options that you'll have. Doesn't mean that you'll be happier. Mm-hmm. You're just going to have more options. So yes, definitely start saving for retirement right now.
All right, let's shake the 8-ball back up here. 8-ball, tell us, is $1 million enough to retire?
Yep. So reply hazy, try again. All right. So this is probably the question that I'm asked the most, which is how much do I need to retire? I actually had somebody ask me this last week on the golf course. And the answer is it depends, because at the end of the day, it's all about cash flow, which is money in versus money out. So if you add up all of your outflows and then add up all of your inflows, what you need to do is determine that gap, and then you sort of back into how much money you need. So $1 million might be plenty, or it might not be near enough. So it just kind of depends on what that gap is. It also depends on what you want to do in retirement. If you got a very simple plans in retirement, you may not need as much. But if you've got some extravagant dreams that you want to fulfill, you may need more money. I would also say, just kind of as an additional bonus tip here, don't depend on the market to make up for your lack of savings in the past. And I see this occasionally. People don't feel like they've got enough money, so they retire, and then they just want to dial up the risk a little bit to kind of make up some lost ground. I wouldn't do that. I don't think that's a very wise move.
Yeah, that's interesting. You dialing up, trying to just kind of chasing those returns in retirement. It's not a good position to be in.
Definitely not.
All right, let's get back to the Magic 8 Ball here. Can I rely on Social Security for my retirement? What do you say?
All right. Yeah, the Magic 8 Ball answer is outlook, not so good. All right. So I think this kind of depends on how old you are right now. So, if you're already getting Social Security, you're okay. Don't worry about things. I know political ads right now are telling people that one candidate is going to cut Social Security. That's not going to happen. If you're getting Social Security, you're going to be just fine. If you're 50, I tell people you're going to get it. I just don't know when you're going to be eligible. There are some things that are going to have to happen, and maybe they push the age of eligibility up a little bit more, to where you can't get it until you're 64 or whatever it is. If you're 30, I could say you could plan on getting less than what you're projected to get, and you are most likely going to get it later than your parents could first get access to it. So again, if I would say if you're under 50, my advice is to plan as if you'll get no Social Security. And then what you do get is going to be gravy on top of that. But, at the end of the day, Social Security, as we've talked about on the show before, it's a math problem. There's too many people collecting and way too few people paying in. So at some point, a politician is going to have to step up and rip the Band-Aid off of this thing and make some real changes. I just don't know who that person is going to be.
Yeah, and I think the key part of that question is, can you rely on it for my retirement? And it can be a part of that income plan, right? But I don't think you can rely on it like maybe you used to, where it could be the majority of your income, right?
100%. I mean, you're spot on there. If all you are going to get for your retirement income is Social Security, you're setting yourself up for some challenges. But if that Social Security is just a part of what you're going to have for retirement income, you're in a better spot than some people are going to be in. But, there's people walking around out there right now that are 60, 62 years old, still plan to work and still have not saved a dime for retirement. They are going to be dependent on Social Security, and I wouldn't want to be in that boat.
Yep.
Hey folks, Lee Perkins here. I wanted to tell you about our brand new book called Next Phase, How to Retire in a Year or Less Without Regrets. It's all about helping you prepare for the next phase of your life, whatever that looks like for you. So, if you're ready to make the most of your next phase, or if you're already retired and aren't sure you're doing all you can to get the most out of your retirement, then you'll want a copy of this book. All you have to do is text Next Phase to 478-475-2050, and we'll send you a copy right away. You can also access additional resources and register for one of our upcoming workshops at our website, www.myretirementclarity.com. Thanks for listening. Now back to the show.
All right, let's shake the Magic 8 Ball back up, and this question kind of piggybacks off the last one. Is it wise to have multiple sources of retirement income?
Yeah, the Magic 8 Ball answer is it is certain. We talk about diversification on the show a lot. It's certainly a big industry buzzword, usually meaning in the context of asset diversification. I talk a lot on the show about tax diversification, meaning not having all of your money in tax-deferred accounts, because if you do, you are sitting up for tax increases. But diversification in income can be just as important. So as we just talked about, don't rely on just Social Security to provide 100% of your retirement income. That is not a good spot to be. If you've got a pension, that's great. Most people don't, and fewer will have that in the future, just as companies have changed their retirement programs. So again, this is where withdrawals from the money that you have saved becomes very, very important. And of course, there's other places that you can get income if you need it. You just have to be tactical about how you do that. Rental income is something that, some people have an option to get. It is another source of income for folks. But let me address this. Not all rental income is created equal. And I would say, there's a ton of folks that have what they call rental income. But when I start digging into the numbers a little bit, they've got a property, and certainly that's worth something. But the income that they get on this property barely offsets the debt, the taxes, and the repairs on that. And so sometimes they're just not netting very much at all. So if this sounds like you, I don't think you've got a source of income here. It's likely you've got a source of problems, maybe headaches and worries, and maybe you should reconsider that strategy. And I would say, Ben, and just, the people that we meet with, and I'm not meeting with real estate investors who do this for a living. I'm meeting with the average mom and pop that has a rental house here or a rental house there. I would say probably less than half the people that I meet with that have rental properties, probably less than half those people are actually creating a positive cash flow. So they would be better off likely just selling the property and then just drawing down from those funds, invest the funds, draw down, however you do it.
Good reminder too, as you're heading into that next phase of retirement, thinking about those sources of income, how you're going to structure that. One good place to start, one good tool that I know you offer everyone listening to the podcast is that Next Phase book.
Yeah, it's sources of income is definitely one of the things that we discuss in there. So, I wrote the book, I guess probably been 2 years ago now, Next Phase, How to Retire in a Year or Less Without Regrets. So if you'd like a copy of that, you can just text the word Next Phase to 478-475-2050, and we will send you out a digital copy of that book. It's a great read, probably only take you 2 hours.
Awesome. All right, let's continue our questioning of the Magic 8 Ball here today. Can I expect to have fewer expenses in retirement compared to what I have now?
Yeah, the Magic 8 Ball answer here is don't count on it. And so the way you pose that question, the question says fewer, and that may not be relevant. There may be some work-related expenses that actually go away, things like eating out or clothes for work or gas to and from work, those kind of things. But I think the better question is, will you have less expenses from a dollar standpoint in retirement? And this depends, but generally speaking, most people's expenses, they do decrease a little bit, but I don't buy into sort of the industry rule to plan on living on 75 or 85% of what you lived on while you were working. So again, I think the main thing to do is to determine this number, figure out what this number is before you retire. And I think that's the number one thing that the average person can do to be prepared for retirement. Is just take inventory, know what you need, so you'll know how much of a gap that you'll have to fill. Then you'll know if you're ready or not to retire.
All right. Key is to review things and make sure everything is on track, which brings me to this question, Lee. Should I be reviewing my retirement plan annually?
Yeah, so this is an easy answer to Magic 8 Ball. Says without a doubt. And of course, I think this is important because this is what I do. And the truth is, most people spend more time planning for a vacation than they do planning for their retirement. But in order to sort of review a plan annually, the first step is really to actually have a plan. And what we find is most people don't have a plan, and that's when they reach out to us. So I would say at a minimum, I know I sound like a broken record. It's knowing what's coming in now versus what's going out now, and then fast forward to what that's going to look like in retirement. So there are also a couple of other things you need to evaluate. Of course, your overall investment plan and what that strategy looks like, your time horizon, of course. You just really need to figure out if your overall needs have changed or your situation has changed. You also need to look at what your tax situation looks like and ask yourself this question. Do you know exactly how much you pay in taxes? Ben, I would tell you, most people don't, and they don't have a clue. They measure their tax scorecard by whether or not they get a refund or whether or not they have to pay a little bit more come tax time, and that's not the right question to ask. You need to know exactly what you're doing. So, and I think from a tax standpoint, this might dovetail us pretty nicely into the next question.
Yeah, and you talked about it earlier. We're getting close to the election, so I know a lot of people are curious about what the future might hold. And That is why we ask you this question. Will my retirement plan be affected by future changes in tax laws?
Yeah, so the Magic 8 Ball answer says signs point to yes. And so in my opinion, this is a certainty. So maybe the Magic 8 Ball got this one wrong. So this should be more of a definite thing. So, until all of our politicians, it doesn't matter what party they're on, until they realize that the current spending patterns are completely unsustainable, taxes have nowhere to go but up. Despite what any political ad that you've heard about somebody cutting taxes, it's a temporary Band-Aid. The Trump tax cuts were temporary back when they were first enacted. Those expire in 2025 unless they're extended. And if they are, that extension is going to be temporary. If you can think back to every presidential election that we've had for your lifetime, every political ad's probably talked about two things: lowering health care and lowering taxes. I don't know that that's really ever happened. So that's going to continue to 30 years from now. There's still going to be two talking points. So again, it's just why I tell everybody you want to be proactive when it comes to tax planning, because the IRS, those guys they're playing chess. And if you don't know that it's a chess game, then you're probably playing checkers, which means you're probably losing.
So true, so true. All right, just a few more questions. Yep. I want to run by the Magic 8 Ball here. Should I focus on paying off debt before increasing my retirement contributions?
Yeah, Magic 8 Ball answer here is most likely. Less debt equals more options in retirement, plain and simple. That's the bottom line there. But that's why the question that we asked earlier of is $1 million enough to retire? That's why that's a hard question to answer. It may be, but it may not be nearly enough. From a debt standpoint, I'm okay with you having a mortgage in retirement if you can afford it and if that fits into your retirement income plan. I'd rather you not have a car payment. I certainly don't want you to have credit card debt that you carry every month, and absolutely don't carry debt for your kids. They've got way more earnings potential than you do. So graduate that debt onto them and let them learn a little bit about how to pay off something that they maybe, were responsible for in the first place.
All right. Here's another one, Lee. Is it too late to start saving if I'm already in my 50s?
Magic 8 Ball answer, my reply is no. And this is an easy one. Why keep not doing something that you should have been doing the whole time? If you know you should have been saving money, don't just throw in the towel and say, well, I've never saved. Let's continue that trend. You're going to need money when you retire, so go ahead and save now. The question is, how much do you save? And the answer is simple. I would save as much as you possibly can. Because if you don't, you're going to have to keep working to support your lifestyle, or you're going to be forced to decrease that lifestyle when you decide that you don't want to work anymore. Whatever you can sacrifice today, it'll pay off in the future. Now, my philosophy on saving for the future is it's mixed a little bit. I definitely want you to save for the future, but I want you to enjoy today. I just don't want you to enjoy today with every dime that you have. You got to be, put some consideration into tomorrow as well.
Yeah, and again, that's why you want to have someone on your team that can help make sure that you can spend that with confidence, right? And that takes us to this last question for the 8 Ball today is, should I consider working with a financial professional as I near retirement?
Yeah, this Magic 8 Ball answer is yes. And again, probably because I'm an advisor, you would expect my answer to be yes, but I would disagree with that, because I do meet some people who shouldn't work with an advisor. Occasionally, some folks' situation is pretty simple with no moving parts, and they don't need an advisor. So I don't think those people need an advisor. Sometimes people want to be in control so much that they're not going to take any advice, and there's nothing wrong with that. I met with a guy about 2 years ago, and one of the things that he absolutely loves doing is putting his investments into a spreadsheet, and he spends a couple of hours every day charting and graphing things. Of course, he's a retired engineer, as you would expect, and he is a self-professed nerd. He would be miserable if he hired an advisor. It just wouldn't go well. So again, if you go to the root of the word advisor, it's advice. And so that's what people pay for. People pay me for advice, and they pay me to handle the things that they either don't know how to handle or they don't want to handle on their own. So, at the end of the day, we've all got blind spots, and we've got to choose whether or not it makes sense to hire somebody to help us with the things that we're not aware of. So yes, I think it definitely makes sense for you to begin working with a financial advisor prior to retirement. How early? I would say 2-3 years, or even more. If you're not going to retire for 8 or 10 years, you got a lot of time to make some adjustments if you need to. So yeah, reach out to an advisor at any stage.
Yeah, you never can be too secure, too confident in what you're doing, and the earlier you start working with someone, the better. If you want to schedule a meeting with Lee, just kind of have him look over things, maybe see if some changes need to be made for your retirement. Again, talkwithjlp.com, the best place to start. You can find a time that works for you and schedule that meeting today. Talkwithjlp.com. You can also call the office. It's 478-254-3550. All right, Lee, had some fun with this one. Thanks for acting as our Magic 8-Ball today. I appreciate your time.
Yes, sir.
All right, thanks for listening to My Retirement Clarity. Please hit subscribe on the show. We'll talk to you again soon.
Hey there, Lee Perkins here. If you're like a lot of folks, you've been listening to this podcast for a long time now. But I've got an important question for you. Have you implemented any of the ideas that we've discussed on the show? If you haven't, what are you waiting on? You know you're not getting any younger. So here's my challenge. Don't just consume the content. Our number one goal for this podcast is to help you close the gap between what you know and what you implement. So if you're ready to implement, take that first step today and visit www.talkwithjlp.com and schedule a 15-minute phone call with one of our advisors, and we'll help you close the gap between what you know and what you implement so you can enjoy the next phase of your life. Now is your time. Don't procrastinate any longer.
Investment advisory services are offered by J.L. Perkins Wealth Management, a registered investment advisor and insurance agency. Information is for illustrative purposes only and does not constitute tax, legal, or investment advice. Always consult with a qualified tax, legal, or investment professional before taking any action.